Before listen, lock your door.
Subscribe for daily horror story.
First story.
My grandfather used to say, never sleep near an old fire tower, especially if the top light's still blinking. That means someone or something is still up there. I wish I'd listened. This happened 6 years ago, during one of the loneliest periods of my life. I'd just quit a soul-crushing office job in Atlanta, ended a long relationship, and packed everything I owned into a dusty Subaru. My plan was simple: disappear into the woods for a few weeks, hike, sleep under the stars, clear my head. The trail I picked was a largely forgotten stretch near the border of West Virginia and Kentucky, tucked between two ridges with almost no cell reception. It wasn't on many modern maps, but I'd found an old forestry guide that mentioned a fire tower at the Summertanas since the 80s. After 2 days of hiking, I reached it. The tower rose out of the trees like something fossilized, rusted. Steel legs, peeling white paint, and a winding staircase that groaned with every step. The cabin at the top was still intact, although the door hung slightly off its hinges. Wind whistled through the cracked glass windows. I had no intention of climbing it. I'm not afraid of heights, but something about the tower made my stomach twist. I camped about 50 yards downslope, just close enough to keep an eye on it. That night, I made a small fire and watched the sky fade from orange to black. The air was unusually still. No crickets, no wind, just silence and the occasional pop from the fire. Then I noticed it, a red light, a soft blinking glow coming from the very top of the tower. It wasn't bright, but steady like an old radio beacon. I told myself it had to be some leftover electronics, maybe powered, maybe malfunctioning. Still, I didn't sleep much. Around 1 a.m., I heard movement from the direction of the tower. Not animals, these were heavy, deliberate steps on metal. The stairs. I sat up, clutching my flashlight, but I didn't turn it on. I waited, breath shallow. The footsteps stopped. Then I heard it, the sound of someone exhaling. Slow, raspy, like it was just outside my tent. I burst out of the tent with my light and shined it toward the tower. Nothing, the blinking red light was gone. I didn't see anyone, but I knew I wasn't alone. That feeling of being watched was overwhelming, like someone was standing just behind the tree line. I stayed up the rest of the night, sitting by the fire, eyes darting toward every sound. At first light, I packed up and left. I didn't even eat. About half a mile down the trail, I found something strange, a shoe print, a single boot print in the mud, not mine, too large, too deep, and pointing toward where I had camped. It hadn't rained. There's no way someone passed by without me hearing them. I hiked hard all day, putting as much distance as I could between myself and the tower. But something was off. The woods were ... wrong, too quiet. I kept getting this sensation that the path was shifting beneath me, that the same trees kept reappearing, that I was moving in circles even though my compass said otherwise. At one point, I saw it again, far off through the trees, the tower. I shouldn't have been anywhere near it. I'd gone in the opposite direction, but there it was, that same rusted skeleton rising above the trees. And this time, the red light wasn't blinking, it was solid. I didn't stop. I didn't breathe. I ran. I didn't stop until dusk, and by some stroke of luck or mercy I stumbled across a gravel service road. From there, I managed to flag down a trucker who was hauling supplies to a ranger station miles away. He let me climb in, gave me water, and listened quietly as I told him what I'd seen. When I mentioned the tower, he went pale. "You saw the one up past Copper Ridge?" I nodded. He didn't speak for a long moment, then said, "That place burned down in '87. Lightning hit it, killed the ranger inside. Ain't nothing left but a concrete pad and scrap." I told him I'd seen it, climbed it, camped beside it. He just stared at the road and muttered, "Then you saw something that didn't want to be found." Back home, I looked into it, and he was right. There was no functional fire tower in that region. Nothing that matched what I saw. Not on any recent satellite images, not even on the old forestry maps. But sometimes, late at night, I dream of metal stairs, of red light, of someone watching me from above. Whatever I encountered, it didn't want to be remembered. So let me say this clearly. Next time you're hiking deep in the Appalachians and see a fire tower that shouldn't be there, keep walking. Some things are built to be forgotten.
Second story.
My uncle used to say, if you find a cabin that doesn't show up on any map, don't open the door, just keep walking. Some doors stay closed for a reason. I didn't listen. I should have. It was late October when I decided to hike solo through a lesser-known part of the Appalachians in North Carolina deep forest. No cell service, and not a single person around for miles. I was trying to escape some things. I won't get into all that. Let's just say I needed quiet. The trail I was following had all but disappeared after the second day. Trees pressed in closer, the air grew colder, and everything felt older, like I'd stepped into a part of the forest time had forgotten. By the third night, I'd gotten off track completely. My map was useless, and my GPS kept glitching, probably from cloud cover. But I wasn't panicking yet. I'd packed enough food and gear to last a week. I set up camp near the base of a jagged rock outcrop, thinking I'd reorient myself in the morning. Then I saw it, tucked between the rocks, half covered in bramble and moss, was the roof of a small structure, a cabin barely visible. It looked ancient. The wood was grey, warped. No path led to it. No signs anyone had been there for decades, maybe longer. I approached it slowly, part curiosity, part dread. The front door hung slightly open. Inside, it was pitch black. I called out, "Hello." Nothing. There was no sound in the woods. No wind, no birds. Just silence. I stepped inside. The air was dry and bitter. It didn't smell like mold or decay, more like dust, old paper, and something sharp like iron. The cabin was one room, a stone fireplace, a rusted iron bed frame, and shelves stacked with yellowed books and hand-labeled jars. The jars were filled with things I didn't want to look too closely at. Roots, bones, hair, teeth. In the center of the room sat a chair facing the door, and on the chair a pair of boots. Just boots. But they were standing upright, like someone had just stepped out of them. I backed away, heart pounding, and turned to leave. That's when I noticed the carving on the inside of the door. It was a symbol, a spiral with jagged lines cutting through. I didn't recognize it, but something about it felt wrong. Not just unfamiliar, hostile. I left quickly. Didn't even check my pack. Just got out and hiked until I couldn't feel my legs. That night, I camped far away on a ridge overlooking a small ravine. But I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing sounds, footsteps, crunching leaves, but never close. Just far enough to let me know they were there. When I finally drifted off, I had the worst dream of my life. I was back in the cabin, only this time The chair was facing me, and the boots were gone. A voice whispered from the shadows, "You opened it." I woke up screaming. I was soaked in sweat. My fire had gone out, and around my tent, in a perfect circle, were boot prints, heavy ones, big, deep, walking around and around, never breaking the circle. I didn't wait. I packed up everything and started hiking in the dark, using only the moonlight. I didn't stop to eat or drink. I just wanted to get out. It took me 2 days to find a ranger station. When I told the ranger what happened, he didn't laugh. He just asked what symbol was on the door. I drew it from memory. He stared at it for a long time, then quietly said, "You need to leave these mountains. Don't come back." I never did. Sometimes, though, I hear a knock on my door at night. Just once, always at 3:17 a.m. when I check. There's nothing there, but the air smells dry, bitter, like dust and iron. If you ever find a cabin that isn't on any map, don't be curious, don't be brave, and whatever you do, don't step inside. Next time, you might not make it back out.
Third story.
My grandfather always said, if the roots of a tree move like they're breathing, don't get close. The earth remembers things we were meant to forget. I didn't believe him until I found that sycamore. I was 24 when it happened. I'd been doing freelance photojournalism for a nature magazine, mostly working small commissions around Virginia. That October, I got a lead about an old farmstead deep in the Appalachian foothills land no one had claimed for decades. Supposedly, it had once belonged to a family that vanished in the 1940s. Some locals called the land cursed. Others just said it was a bad place to get lost. That was all I needed to hear. I wanted photos, maybe a spooky article about mountain legends. I figured I'd hike in, shoot for a day or two, and hike out. I didn't bring anyone with me, didn't tell anyone where I was going. That was my first mistake. The second was thinking the trail was still a trail. After 6 miles into the woods, the path dissolved into underbrush. There was no cell signal, but I had topo maps and a compass. I wasn't worried until I saw the fence. It stretched about 4 feet high and was rusted through in places, sagging like it hadn't been touched in 70 years. But it was still there. Circling something up ahead, I stepped over it. The air changed instantly. Colder, still. No birds, no insects. Just wind creaking through tall grass and brittle cornstalks, long since dead. The farmhouse was still standing. What was left of it? The front porch had collapsed. Windows shattered. A rusted weather vane spun slowly, despite no breeze. I snapped photos, walked around, documented everything. But the strangest part wasn't the house. It was the sycamore behind. The farmhouse stood the largest sycamore I'd ever seen. The roots curled above the ground like claws. Some of them had split the soil open, leaving small trenches that vanished into the earth. As I got closer, I noticed something impossible. The roots were moving, slow, subtle, like shallow breathing, beneath the dirt. I crouched down, thinking maybe it was some animal burrowed underneath. But as I watched, the soil pulsed. The ground shifted not from wind or pressure, like it was alive. Then I saw something glint in the dirt. Metal. I reached down and pulled out what looked like a child's shoe buckle. Next to it was a snapped bit of bone, dark and porous. Old. Suddenly I felt like I wasn't alone, not in the normal way. Not like someone was behind me, more like the earth itself was aware of me. Like the ground wanted me to know I'd made a mistake. I backed away. Took maybe 5 steps before I heard it. Voices underneath, muffled, whispering. I froze. Bent down, listened. It was faint, but it was there. Low, rhythmic whispers, like a dozen people speaking in unison under the soil. Then it stopped, dead silence. I turned and ran. My bag bounced on my back, camera swinging wildly. I didn't stop until I reached the fence end. That's when I saw the footprints. Bare dot, dozens of them, leading out from the tree line toward the house. They hadn't been there before. I ran even faster, crashing through brush, tripping once so hard I tore open my hand. I didn't care. I didn't stop until I made it back to my car, 5 hours later, shaking and bleeding. I didn't tell the magazine what happened. I turned in the photos and said the trail was too degraded to explore. But I kept one photo for myself, one eye. Never submitted. It shows the sycamore tree, its roots twisting, and just beneath one of the exposed trenches, something pale, a hand thin, small, like a child's, curled beneath the soil. I zoomed in dozens of times. It never changed. 2 weeks later, I started having dreams, not nightmares, just repetitions. The tree, the whispering, the feeling of weight in the earth. I moved back to the city, stopped hiking altogether. But sometimes, when I walk by old buildings, or pass certain parks with overgrown roots, I get the same tight feeling in my chest, like the ground is watching. I've learned not to talk about it. People think it's just trauma, imagination, something I made up. But I know what I heard, know what I saw, and I never, ever step over fences anymore. Because whatever was buried beneath that sycamore, it wasn't resting. It was waiting. Next time you see the roots of a tree pulsing like they're breathing, walk the other way. You don't want to hear what the soil has to say.